Welcome to another panel hosted by Grand Student Action Together. My name is Ashlyn. I am one of the co-founders and acting executive director for the nonprofit. My colleague Jelena, who you all used to see, she's been taking a leave of absence. We have our board member, Brianna Martin, with us tonight. And we have one of our new interns, Liv, who is going to be moderating this panel. She came up with this idea, and I think that it is the perfect way to close out the month of Black History Month, especially with everything that's going on in the State House with the, school censorship, anti-CRT bills. And as we all know, South Carolina history is Black history. All history is Black history. We need to learn about these things 24/7, but when they, won't even give you a month, little ramble here, but I just learned that my first grader didn't learn anything in school about Black History Month and was shocked, but shouldn't have been shocked. So we are here to learn some things, spread some knowledge, and continue learning and educating the community. And Talisa has just joined us. Talisa is with the Palmetto State Abortion Fund and does your friendly neighborhood activist, where she puts together different things for the unhoused community and hygiene products, and is trying to put in some vending machines for hygiene products. So we're super stoked to have you be a part of this panel as well. I am going to let Liv introduce the rest of what we're talking about and the rest of the panelists, so we can get started on that. We're going to be covering the history of the Black Panther Party and the current Black Lives Matter movement.
Hello, everybody. So I am a freshman here at Coastal Carolina, and I'm very excited to be here. I think this is an incredibly important topic to cover. I don't think it's a widely known area as well, so I feel like this is important to cover it. We have Pastor Dixon with us, who actually spent some time in Chicago during the movement. And we also have Omari Fox, who is a community organizer. If y'all want to introduce yourselves a little bit.
Yeah, hey, what's happening, everybody? Good to be here. Good to be here. I really didn't spend some time in Chicago. I spent 32 years of my life in Chicago, born and raised there. And when I was in high school, I was somewhat affiliated with the Black Panther Party in Chicago up under Chairman Fred. I was in high school. I was in senior year when he was assassinated in 1969. Matter of fact, I almost didn't graduate high school because myself and the other African-American students at the school I went to was 98% white. We walked out that morning to go and join the Black Panthers over on the west side of Chicago for a mass rally and protest about the assassination. So that's a little bit about me. I'm gonna turn it over. Omari, roll it.
Peace and love, everybody. I'm Omari Fox, community organizer, field organizer with Progressive Network. I started out organizing when I was in Benedict College 20 plus years ago. It was a murder outside the campus, and I was art club president, and I kind of got appointed to speak at an assembly, to lift a brother up and his family. And then the way that I framed, I did a poem, and I kind of gave it like a manifesto. And we had an art club meeting maybe a few days later, and everybody kept asking me like, yo, what's the plan? And I'm like, what you mean, what's the plan? I'm the art club president. So all these people came out to the art club and was looking for militant direction. So I had to quickly make a pivot from the creative side to more of a community organizer side, which is where I learned a lot of my chops. And was with Orangeburg chapter, BLM, Charleston, and co-founded Columbia back in 2014. So seen a little bit of everything on the activism trail. Glad to be a part of the panel. And pass it to Brianna.
Hello, everyone. I hope we're all doing well on this fine Monday night. Obviously, as Ashlyn said before, I am a board member of GSAT. I've also was involved in the Black Lives Matter chapter in Charleston for a little bit. And I would consider myself a budding young activist who's very passionate about these topics that we're talking about here today. So can't wait to begin the conversation, and I'm happy to hear from you all. I'll pass it off to my bestie, Talisa.
Thanks, Brianna. I'm Talisa. Like Ashlyn said, I am on the board for Palmetto State Abortion Fund. I also have my own nonprofit, Friendly Neighborhood Activists. We're a grassroots organization who are trying to increase access to hygiene products in the unhoused community. I also consider myself an activist, so I'm very excited to be here with you guys and learn from you guys today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all being here to add to this conversation. I'm wondering if any of you could talk about and tell us a little bit about how and why the Black Panther Party formed.
I can swing first and let my colleagues back me up. I'm doing my homework. I was really looking at the 20 years that led up to the 60s. And knowing that most of I think Bobby Seale was 30 the year that they founded it in 66. I think he was born in 36. So he was probably the most elder statesman, when him and Huey was still pretty young at the time. But just looking at the 40s and 50s in the world, Lumumba, a lot of African nations gaining independence. Certainly World War II coming home, Black soldiers and that reception to being a hero and coming back to America, United States. 55 bus boycott, I think, was probably the seminal moment of activism for a lot of people in the 60s. 57, I think Little Rock 9. So yeah, this flurry of resistance all throughout our history, certainly, but I think that 20 years leading up to the 60s were pretty significant shakeups in the world on the national scene, and in the United States. So just my feeling of, I think there's a tendency to kind of not want to be like your parents. So, certainly the Dr. Kings, the Rosa Parks, and that class of organizer with that presentation didn't appeal to everybody. And certainly that kind of probably how they were receiving it in a more of a kumbaya way and not really like much bravado to it. I think they just wanted to add their own kind of energy to it that really went alongside of, what Dr. King and SCLC and a lot of groups are doing. But I think it really spoke to that affirmation or search of the masculinity, which is why it's very toxic in a lot of ways. But I think what it was also appealing was the unified kind of a search in the masculinity, which is the image. But like most documentaries, PBS and others will tell you, the rank and file were really the sisters, and which I don't think they get enough credit for. I think they were pretty decently represented in Judas and the Black Messiah, but still probably on a whole, we know that women have a different reception in our revisionist history than men. And although we're all part of that oppressed group, I don't think it's much different for black folks either. You know, men are still put forward as, you know, the bigger names and brands in the movement. But I'll just say that Huey and Bobby had enough, you know, at that kind of moment where the last situation with the police came together. And I don't think that they envisioned an international, you know, proletariat as it, you know, later evolved to. But I think just speaking to Oakland issues, which were national issues, which were international issues, they arrived at the Black, you know, Panther as a symbol, and it's, you know, it's called Black Panther Party for self-defense. So obviously the initial resistance was against police. And I'll pass it.
Yeah, a great intro, Mark. Great intro. And spot on. It's we have to, you know, looking back at the roots of the Black Panther Party for self-defense, just as you close with, the initial focus was on protecting the community from police brutality. Manning up inside of the community, taking back control of the community, open carrying arms in order to let law enforcement know you're not going to push us around anymore. But on a larger scale, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, with the intellects that they possessed, they understood the nature of systemic racism and oppression. And they understood that police brutality was only one aspect of what had to be addressed in the community. While the movement with Dr. King and others nationally was making awareness to the issues that Black people in the 60s were facing, and we still continue to face today. Let me make that perfectly clear. They were addressing those issues from a different level. It wasn't at the ground. It wasn't in the urban community. It wasn't in the hood. And when Huey and Bobby came together, they brought it down street level. And while, say, like in '63, when the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom took place with Dr. King and his folks, later Huey and them, part of their platform, there was an economic part of their platform for demanding jobs for the community. So these were interconnected, but I believe on different social strata. The same way today that we have one level of activism, an older activism, that's not really connected where it should be, though, with the younger activism of BLM. So I think that's what we saw in 1966 with Huey and Bobby coming together, bringing together a movement that ultimately would move out to, I believe, like 68 cities and draw thousands into that movement, because it gave a segment of society, urban Black people, who felt helpless, hopeless, and everything. It gave them a reason to believe in themselves. And not only to believe in themselves, but to stand up and say, you're not going to put your hand on me without feeling it back.
Thank you for that. I know in order to be a part of the Black Panther Party, you had to, sit in a classroom and learn about the ideology of that party. I'm wondering if any of you could speak on the ideology of the party and what they really stood for.
I mean, I can say something about this a little bit because I just know just from my own research of their ideologies, most of it focused on Black nationalism, socialism, and really like armed self-defense, just like both of these men have mentioned before. That was a huge part of the Black Panther Party, and being armed, especially against police brutality, which I mean, obviously is still rampant in our world today. But at that time, they were in a place where, you know, nobody was defending them but themselves. So those, to what I've researched, has kind of just been, those were like the main ideologies that I myself have, you know, seen. If anybody else wants to comment, but that's what I know.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is that specifically had a 10-point platform. And when I was younger and I first read it, I read it like maybe guiding principles. And as I just got older and started to look back on it, I still think it's guiding principles, but it also kind of sounds, I'm thinking of the movie quote, they made an allusion to it. Basically like a Black people's Bill of Rights. I'm remembering it wrong from the film, but that's how I kind of look at it now. It's like a manifesto for the humanity of Black people, and certainly talking about healthcare and some of the other points that are lifted up. That's, you know, it actually, if y'all are familiar with what President Roosevelt was trying to get across in terms of like those healthcare and a lot of those kind of humanity assertions. I don't know that they referenced that, but he did have some language around what the big fear is. And although wealth is a great disparity, I do think in the face of food deserts, you know, like we're facing today and certainly back then, health would be an equalizer, which would be an obvious thing that, you know, why they still voting against it, you know, even though it's already law, not the best law or coverage, but certainly still there nonetheless. So that's the only other point I would add.
Yeah, this that 10-point platform, it's key. I went ahead on it, printed it out, and I just want to go over some of the points of it right quick. You know, I don't want to monopolize the time here, but I think it's crucial to actually hear some of the 10-point platform, and then to listen to it, connecting the dots between 1966 when Huey and Bobby came up with this and where we are today in 2022. So the first point in the platform is we want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black and oppressed communities, something that we've never had. Everybody's controlling the Black community but the Black people. And in many ways, we've surrendered our own power because we have never seized our own power. That was one of the phrases that was used during that movement, seize the time and all power to the people. The second one was we want full employment for our people, something we're still seeking for today. We're still the lowest paid ethnicity in the United States. Our value is not the value of a human being even today. They said we want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our Black and oppressed communities. Predatory pimping inside of the Black community that has been happening since we never got there. Let me just put it this way, since the beginning of time. The fourth one was we want decent housing. Who would fight against these things? Decent housing, fit for the shelter of human beings. The fifth, we want education. And there's a caveat in there, so we want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. Sound familiar? Sounds definitely like what folks are fighting against right now. Number 6, we want completely free healthcare, universal healthcare. What's wrong with that? This is real. 7th point, we want an immediate end to police brutality. and the murder of Black people and other people of color, all oppressed people inside of the United States. Number 8, we want an immediate end to all wars and of aggression. Number 9, we want freedom for all Black and poor oppressed people now being held in our state, federal, county, city, and municipal and military prisons and jails. And last but definitely not least, we want land, we want bread. It's a summation in number 10. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, peace, and people's community control of modern technology. Basically, number 10 say we want just what that pledge that you make our kids learn. We want those last 6 words of it, liberty and justice for all. We want an equal playing field like every other, well, like in particular, white America has. We want that playing field for all. So I just wanted to make sure that we just put that on the table as far as the 10-point platform. Nothing scary about that.
Thank you, Pastor Dixon.
Sorry. I just want to add that I love that you read those out loud because it really does parallel to today. Like, listening to you talk about that, it reminds me of like all the people who are fighting with their school systems who are currently trying to get rid of critical race theory, which would teach them stuff like this. And these are just basic human rights.
46 years later, and the same message. I'm gonna just drop that right there.
Yeah, I totally agree with Talisa. Thank you so much, Pastor Dixon, for reading those out loud. And they still, ring true today that this is what we want to be striving for. So there were a lot of programs throughout the Black Panther Party nationally, but I know that Chairman Fred Hampton, he wanted to create a rainbow coalition. And I don't know if Pastor Dixon, maybe you know about that. I don't know if anybody else can speak on that, but I think that's definitely an important part of the movement.
Yeah, I'll jump it off. I don't want to monopolize the conversation tonight at all. But yeah, Chairman Fred, he had a unique understanding of the concepts of oppression. That oppression is shared. Those in power, they're really not concerned about specific ethnicities. They're concerned about oppressing anybody they can oppress. And he was able to connect the dots between the Latino community, the white community, poor whites, poor Latinos, the Black community, the gangs, and all of that. He was able to connect the dots and get them to understand that we're all fighting the same system. So why is it that we continue to fight over a plot of ground that we don't even own, while we have a bigger enemy at hand, the system that's oppressing all of us? So let's put our forces together and see what kind of strength we can come up with and fight from that perspective. And that's where that Rainbow Coalition came from. It bridged a gang gap that was really deep in the 60s in Chicago that had never been seen before. And it took that charismatic leader like Chairman Fred to pull that together.
I wanted to maybe ask a cross question to the panel, maybe especially Talisa. Was it Talisa? Am I saying your name right?
Talisa.
Talisa, I'm sorry about that. Do you see any parallel between the survival programs and like the breakfast and such, and kind of taking that approach to the young people in the community at the time, and any equity or parallel to your movement in terms of just like the basic human needs for unsheltered brothers and sisters?
Ooh, yes, and no. I feel like, well, I know for us, like the work we do with friendly neighborhood activists, like we think about these things. So we take the steps to look at history and read on, you know, what type of initiatives they were doing in the community and see how we can implement that today. But I also think that in the age of COVID, where we live in a very individualistic society, it's not very, like, I think people don't really think about those things. So like, I think that, you know, maybe back then it was like, we have to be a community, we have to work together. Like that's the only way it could ever be seen as, you know, something bigger. But now I can only speak from my personal experience. It's a really hard to mobilize sometimes and get people to see like the greater picture and really work as a community. So I think all these initiatives that and the programs that they had in the back then were super important and super needed today. But I don't think on a community level, the whole community always sees that.
And I would just have to echo and like completely agree with you, because just like the mobilization, and I don't know like where the disconnect is exactly, but I do know that like there is a disconnect in terms of getting not even just basic things like yes, people do community service, like yes, we go out in the community and, you know, we go to shelters and we give back and we do drives and things like that. But right now there's no constant, right? So like we do these things like a weekend or like once a month, but there's no like to me, the Black Panther Party was a constant entity in the community. You know, it wasn't just sometimes they were handing out stuff or sometimes they were here or sometimes they provided classes. It was all the time. And like right now, I think just in speaking in the recent realm, like I myself have not seen an organization really take on that commitment, especially in this area of Horry County. It's very hard to find like-minded people who do want to work with you and do want to create that space. So I just think that it's definitely become more increasingly difficult, especially being an individualistic society. Everybody wants to do everything themselves and nobody ever wants to ask for help. And we all believe that we can get everything done if we just do it ourselves. But that sense of community, I think, along the years, unfortunately, has left a lot of us. And it's very hard to get that back when you don't really understand where the sense of community came from in the first place.
I want to add on real quick. Also, a big piece of it is money. A lot of times we cannot do the community work that we do without money. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not swimming in money. So it's hard to, you know, connect on that community level when you have to buy food and clothes and then just to give it out. So a lot of the times, like, you know, we're preaching to the choir. The people watching this are people who are interested in this, who probably already do the work all the time in anyways and give a lot of their time and money. But like when we're asking for donations and we're like, hey, we're putting on these drives, we're putting on these events. When you ask for money, people are very, very hesitant now. And you know, we live in a capitalistic society. Everyone's trying to get rich. I understand that, you know, we're all working towards something, but when it comes to helping people, that becomes a small fish now because money is first and I am first. So my money, my things, you know, it's hard to have that community feel after that because you worked all this time, you made all this money, you don't want to give that away. And I noticed like, especially like working with Ashland and with the abortion fund or just with GSAT, like getting recurring donors, like it's really, really hard. And money plays a big role in community organizing and activism these days. And I think that's a big piece of it that you can't leave out. Like, even if you have the community feel, if the money's not coming with it, there's just not so much, there's only so much we can do.
Yeah, I think, let me right quickly. As far as that level of organizing that we saw with Chairman Fred, that extends into the different programs that Omari, had talked about. I think it takes a special individual, a person who has that specific gift, was born in with that gift. And right here, we had one of those individuals here who I believe that had the potential to galvanize the community on multiple levels, spanning economic differences and racial differences and everything. But just like with Chairman Fred, his life was cut short before he had an opportunity to realize the full potential that he was placed here for. So I've noticed that every charismatic leader that we have that comes together to bring the masses of the people together, the proletariat together, some reason or other, they don't make it too long. While you have others who seem to last for years. And primarily because, in my humble opinion, it's because they don't have that gift to bring the people together. And it's a gift. Everybody can't do that. Everybody can't do that.
No, it's definitely missing. I feel like a lot of times, like, especially with what he did, like bringing all those different groups of people together to all work on one accord is literally, it's an extremely difficult feat. And even I know back in that day, of course it was difficult, but just think about where we are right now and like how politics has entered into human rights, and how just like this conversation has continued to be not about what the actual rights that are being asked for, but about like the policy surrounding these things and how certain people feel about certain policies. And it's become a conversation of, okay, not how can we come together as a community to address this issue, but like as in where do your loyalties lie? And it's going to be very hard to get past that, especially in this generation, because that's something that we really do focus on. And I sincerely believe is going to take a person chosen by whomever you want to, whoever you believe in, God, the universe, whatever. But it's going to take a person literally specifically selected to be able to mobilize, all these groups of people in a way that is effective and that presents to be a welcoming environment and not an environment of judgment or fear, which is very difficult to create in the society that we have now.
I just want to introduce Marcus McDonald. He just came into the live stream. He is lead organizer for Charleston Black Lives Matter. And if he can introduce himself just a little bit, let us know about his work.
Yeah, sorry, I'm coming in late. I just left the town hall. It's good to see some familiar faces. See Pastor Dixon in here in the building. Definitely mad respect for my brother. We are just organizing that Greenville, what was that? Like a couple days ago. So we stay moving. But anyways, yeah, so my name is Marcus McDonald. Lead organizer Charleston Black Lives Matter. I don't know if Pastor Dixon told you about it, but Black Lives Matter has a long history in Charleston, created in 2015 with Muhammad Baha, who structured the chapter. In a lot of ways, we still continue to structure it. He unfortunately was assassinated in 17, excuse me. And yeah, so, I've picked up that torch and continue to do the work. And that's, something that I see as not only a continuation of Dean's work, but the work of our ancestors at the Black Panther Party, who a lot of them still alive today. And we still talk to and work with. But I don't know how deep you want to go into it. I know it's the butt-in meeting, but, brief just about, how we do it at Charleston Black Lives Matter and how we emulated a lot of things that the Black Panther Party did. It's actually the Muhammad quote, is don't prescribe unless you can describe. And that's what the Panthers are all about. They're all about being in the community, working with the youth. Shoot, they had vaccine clinics, like literally everything under the sun to protect their people and empower their people. Because a lot of times at the time, like I said, I don't know how much of this is being rehashed, but or was said before, but the government is literally out to get the Black Panthers in several different ways. We get the COINTEL program in a lot of different ways, and they really saw, and it was like literally in the manifesto, it was like, damn, like we really wanted to paint them as villains, but they're literally like giving food to kids. Like it's hard to, paint that in a villainous light. And they ended up still doing it by erasing it from history. But that's what we like to do, things like that. Like we just had a youth art exhibit on this past Saturday. We do like food drives on a weekly and monthly basis. And again, like it's the same thing they did the Panthers. Like nobody talks about it. Like I've even had news, because I remember I got arrested maybe like a week and a half before then. The news was all over my face. Like as I was getting arrested, like on the ground, like, what do you have to say about this? Like, and I was like, anyways, but like I said, a lot of attention around that and the protesting, but never attention around like we had a community youth showcase the next like 2 or 3 days later, hit up all the news stations that were, recording. And I was like, talk about this. Like you're going to talk about one side, talk about the other. And that didn't happen, but that just goes to show you how much has not changed in the media and how they like prioritize what they want to see. And it's like, if you're doing something other than protesting or what they expect BLM to do, then they're going to like erase it. But anyways, so that and just different economic empowerment programs we have, like financial literacy classes, and different tools as far as like real estate and learning about how to, be financial literate. So those things, and also the criminal justice aspect, that was something that was a huge part. They did, literally followed police to make sure that, they weren't brutalizing Black folks. And Bobby Seale actually said, and people always give us flack about defund the police, but then be like, y'all should be more like the Panthers. It's like, the Panthers were so defund the police. Like Bobby Seale said in a few, I don't know when this document, when he said this, but if you look up Bobby Seale explains the 10-point program on YouTube, it'll come up. But he said this, and it's wild how this statement is so alive today and it's so real. And it's a defund the police statement. But he said this year, it was Los Angeles Police Department got this amount of funding. And then the year after, they got this amount. And it's like, they keep getting more funding, but then they got money for wars, but don't have money to feed the poor. And it's like, that's what the Panthers saw as a huge, like, hypocrisy, because not only the army structure that we spend millions and millions of dollars more than any other country, but also the fact that we prioritize police versus, like, education programs. And this will be my last point, but it's like, to show you the disparities in those, especially in Charleston, from my own eyes, and this is why I'm a big proponent of defund the police, is because the police get millions of dollars in several different things that are not really productive at all, in military equipment. And Mount Pleasant, which is like a suburban city in Charleston, they have several tanks. It's like, in what world would y'all need to, do that exactly? So, but on the same note, they had a youth program that's funded for the city, and they ran out of food. So it's like, it just shows you, like I said, priorities matter. And that's why, again, like, the budget reflects those priorities. And, that's why we advocate for people's budget to be more centered around things that help and empower the community versus, imprison them and, put them further back. So that's just a brief synopsis. I wasn't able to say anything. Like I said, I didn't know what has already been said, but we try to base a lot of our work around that, a lot of the community control work that we do around the work that the Panthers did. And we just try to pull up and just be the best community members and the best, revolutionary thinkers, but also doers. Like, that's what the Panthers are about. They're not about philosophizing all the time. It was good to have that, baseline study, but also just getting out in the community and do things. And that's just how I see my life. And that's what I try to do. Me and Pastor Dixon be doing it all, it seems like, but, we doing our thing. So that's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing, Marcus. So after the murder of George Floyd, people were calling it a racial reckoning, and that we saw uprisings unlike anything since the civil rights era. I'm wondering what everyone's take is on that, if you agree or disagree, and why or why not.
I think oh no, it's okay.
Girl, go ahead. Go, Brie.
Are you sure? Because I know. Okay. Sorry. I was basically just going to say that this question kind of made me think of, like, what exactly is a racial reckoning, right? So, like, how do we really define a racial reckoning? Because if we think about George Floyd, like in that same year, there was a number of people that were brutally murdered by the police who were, organized for and, in remembrance of. And I don't know. I just think that it makes me think about like, what is a racial reckoning? Because this has happened time and time again. So like, yes, I won't say George Floyd's death was not significant, but I'm not going to sit here and make him a martyr because that's not what his life was. His life was full of a bunch of other things. And I don't think that it's right for me to put him in that role. But I think that these deaths that have happened, like, have definitely been catalyst, is what I will say, in the movement to moving forward to something bigger and better and trying to really make a difference in our community, that they have each in their own way had a significant impact. And I think that's where my opinion kind of lies on this subject.
Thank you, Bree.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that conversation. I think it's generational. For me, my race moment would probably be crack in 85, 84, 85. That's the summer of 86. I was at my grandmother's house, had no cable. So we only had 2 channels, and one of them had Iran Contra hearings. And for whatever reason, I just watched them in entirety. And I was sitting there like, wow. So the president and Nancy Reagan saying, say no to drugs. And, Oliver North is saying yes to drugs and make a profit, to fight wars in other places and, use drug profits to finance it. And then certainly the bills and the jail sentences, and then you get 50 to 1. You got this amount of cocaine, you get this kind of sentence. You got 1 shred of crack on you, and you got to spend the rest of your life in prison. I think that generation set the tone for the crime that kind of heightened in the 90s, that led to the 94 crime bill, which was still kind of seeing the after effects of in the prison industrial complex. So that was, I was in my tens and teens in the 80s. So I think everybody has like their own timeline of like what the significant racial tremor was for them. But I certainly see crack as police related in the sense of having, arresting people for the things that the government actually sanctioned on the Black community. And that's really what drew the line in the sand for me with police when I was younger. So it took me a long time to really kind of get over that resentment.
I'll add on a little bit. I like how Omari said, his race moment, like this was his moment where he realized, this is not okay. And I think everyone has their point with that. I feel like if I ask my little brother and my little sister, my little sister is 20 and my little brother is about to turn 18, like George Floyd is probably the biggest thing in their lifetime that when it comes to like the racial divide and things like that, like, yes, they would mention that. But like me, I would say like Trump was just being elected when I graduated high school. I remember my peers letting us know, we were the Black kids at school, like that was my moment. So I guess it really depends who you ask. And I would say whether it's George Floyd or the crack epidemic in the 80s or Trump being elected or anything like that, like it's as equally as important because it brought you here and it brought you to this movement, it brought you to this moment, and you decided to say no.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Let me chime in right quick on this racial reckoning thing. I would love to idealistically say that there was some type of reckoning in the United States as far as race. But if we look at what's happened in the United States since the murder of George Floyd, yes, there's been some victories as far as prosecutions, some things that would not have happened 50 years ago, 40 years ago, as far as law enforcement officers being convicted, lynchings, those who did lynchings being convicted, those things wouldn't have happened 50 years ago. So I believe that the needle is moving, but the pushback, because we don't consistently stay on that field, because we allow terms like reckoning, racial reckoning, to be embraced as if it's gotten better, when the reality is a victory here and a victory there is not systemic change. We have the same systemic problems that were encountered in the 60s when Huey Newton and Bobby Seale started the Black Panther Party. They're still here. And George Floyd and the other, thank God for the videos that we have now that's been pointing more to the over-aggressive policing, but the remedies, the actual reckoning, the reconciliation of race in America is not there because of that overwhelming pushback. Because unfortunately, those who have power, they don't want to relinquish their power simply by saying that they've been wrong, that equality is a tenet that we must live by, and that everyone has an opportunity to have the same life as everyone else. They don't want that. This is threatening them, and they get paranoid about it. And you have people who stoke the fires of paranoia, like Donald Trump. And because of that, yes, we had a little bit of movement. We had some movement. I'm not going to take that back. But the strides that we could be making, we're not making. Maybe if we could put together that rainbow coalition or something like that of folks. Maybe if we can get people off the keyboards and into the streets. Maybe if we could really get people to understand that oppression is a shared experience, and that all of us, no matter who we are, if we're not winning, we're losing. Maybe we could get this thing. Maybe we get everybody to join GSAT.
So I have a question follow up on that. Do any of y'all see any notable differences in like the public opinion or public outrage? From Trayvon Martin to Philando Castile to Sandra Bland compared to George Floyd, where I feel like we saw like a massive short-lived movement. And I, don't know everything that happened, in between had the same sort of outcome.
Yes, what I put in the chat. This is the first time I've seen police chiefs and rank and file officers being able to come out and make statements against or about what's happening in the profession. I know a lot of police, and I hate saying like I know this one good cop, or it's like saying, well, I know a good white person, or I know this person or that person. So I don't want to blanket anybody who's doing what they're supposed to do in their profession, but they are under, they don't have like the freedom of speech to speak on a lot of issues. If they oppose police brutality or whatever, sometimes it's kind of a formal mandate, maybe policy wise. And then there's just the social pressure of having to, be the one that broke the rank of speaking on issues. But from seeing what happened up here, seeing police kneel and stuff like that, I was also in a lot of places where I saw a lot of just different police administrators kneeling with the community. Notice, and I still feel like we're still in that age of Kaepernick to a degree. So that was probably in my lifetime the one time where I saw law enforcement really be able to say anything about how they felt about this national trauma that's well documented on video. And I don't know, in a lot of ways I actually feel like the video almost had the reverse effect. It seemed like it just increased more video. It didn't slow anything down.
Thank you, Omari. A question that I would love to maybe end on, tomorrow is the start of Women's History Month. So to kind of, when you look at Angela Davis, who was a prominent figure in the Los Angeles chapter of the Black Panther Party, as well as many other things. You look at the Combahee River Collective and stuff like that. How has the Black feminist movement impacted, Black Lives Matter today and all other feminist movements or womanist movements?
I can respond. I'm gonna first by starting saying that I'm not a feminist. I'm a womanist, so that is what I identify as. I think feminism, in short, was not created for everybody, and because in the beginning of the feminist movement, a lot of Black queer women were the women who were mobilizing, and they never got their credit or dues. So I think that that's definitely kind of swayed my view to be a womanist. But I think in terms of how being a Black womanist affects being an activist, and also being a part of these movements. Black men obviously have an intersectional identity as being a male and Black, but Black women also have that as well. So always Black, always a woman. So you really, when you're looking at these policies and you're looking at ways to mobilize, you in the back of your mind are always having to think of, okay, well, yes, I'm Black, but being a woman also has everything to do with how I am an activist, and has everything to do with the type of policies and the type of things that I want to address. That has a big impact on me as an activist. So, and I think that a lot of these movements and a lot of, big pushes in the community have all come from mostly Black women. And of course, they're all, not to say that Black men are not also mobilizing too, but to say that, Black women I believe, are the backbone of the Black community. So they have a lot of impact and influence on what we do as activists altogether. And I could talk about this all day. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I just want to add on. I mean, even though I ain't really much to add on, that's facts. Definitely the backbone of the culture, the activism movement, throughout history. You know what I mean? Not even in America, but throughout history in general. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to take away it. But yeah, I think, as I said before, BLM was created by queer Black women, and it shows how they get betrayed in the media. It shows how we really treat Black women in this society, in this culture. Because, I mean, for a lot of different reasons, but it's we really don't show them. And I don't know, I don't want to get tongue tied, but we don't show them as much respect as needed by any means. And, that just, like I said, it shows you where we're at in our culture. But like Brianna said, definitely the backbone of society. I don't want to add too much, but even in the party, just to go a little bit further, it's people in the party, Black women in the party, is so crucial to creating those school programs, to create being there to feed the kids, that they're pivotal and crucial to that and the planning as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said thus far as um, our Black women. Um, but to take it a step further, I think that what we see as far as the lessening of the position and the role of Black women in our community and in our society is based upon the lack of male support and respect for our Black women in our community. I think that if we devoted more time to lifting up our sisters than we do tearing them down, then I think that we could turn this thing around. I get troubled by the fact that we have a Black History Month and a Women in History Month. I'm troubled by that fact, period. Because every day we got women and every day we got Black folks. And we should be celebrating all every day. The accomplishments of our women. I get so tired. I'm old. Okay, I'm old. I'm probably twice some of you all's age on here, but I didn't learn about the accomplishments of our women until the latest movies came out after 2000. I don't get that. And then to have watched I got to look at suffrage and the women's movement for white women and the wrong in that, and the pay disparities and pay equities and the lack of adequate treatment even today. Adding that melanin tint to the skin, and that's a major problem. But until we as males begin to fight the fight alongside of our females, standing up, representing, and not just in word only, but in deed, respecting our women, then we're going to continue to have this fight. And it makes our women have to fight 2 and 3 times as hard. And so who are we to call our Black Lives Matters if we're not going to make sure that our Black women's lives matter? That's just me. I'm confused. But I'll fight that fight any day, because until we all are on that same plane of equitability in America, we're all stuck behind we can't be behind the 8 ball. We got to be behind the cue ball. I don't know. 8 ball's black, but I'm gonna leave that there.
Thank you, everybody. Just wanted to ask if there's anything that you think that we didn't get to cover that you wanted to mention, or any other questions that anybody might have.
I'll add one more thing. I love the topic of the Black move, furthering the Black community and women. And my favorite person to bring up is Ella Baker. I won't go too much into detail because I feel like everyone has said everything I feel, but please look up Ella Baker, someone who was so pivotal to the civil rights movement, but is so forgotten. She's not taught a lot. And I didn't learn about her until I went to Coastal, thanks to Dr. Debbie Perkins. So I'm just going to leave that for you guys to do your research on your own. But Ella Baker is someone who is just perfect example of this topic.
Yeah, I'll dovetail and say, as a Generation Xer, I've seen pre-internet and internet. So I'm not totally a super texted generation, but I don't think that the cell phone has been weaponized enough in terms of education. Like, when I was a kid, you pretty much had to get microfiche and go to a library. You had to really go through a process to get an old article and things like that. There was no internet, or it was there, but it was dial-up, was super slow, and Google around and all that. And I think that there are opportunities between the generations to get the wisdom like the written and accurate information, because there is a lot of accurate internet sources or just ways to get it online or download books and things like that. I wish that the generations were able to bridge the best of what everybody brought to the table. I think the old school brought us a certain dignity and way of being in the world and presentation. I think the Panthers rebelled against it, but still brought, their kind of bravado to it. I don't think the intersections have ever been like clearly articulated to get people to mobilize so that we can see the common interests. I think probably, going back to Chairman Fred, he probably is one of the few that could just make it plain and say, all right, he could land on poverty and everybody could make sense of it and kind of see themselves in that and see a common struggle. But yeah, I wish that there was a little more bridge work. I usually when I've been in the room, I've been the guy to talk to the elders and then talk to people under me. And the first time I met Patrice Cullors a few times, but the first time I met her, I was in Chapel Hill at a conference. I forgot, it was some kind of Black centric conference, and she hadn't been, nationally known yet. This is like 2008 sometime. But she kind of said, I'm from Cali, and talked about how they did business out in on the West Side. And the old school Southern folks in the room, they went after her. And then it became like this old heads and the West Coast versus this. It was kind of almost like a rap war in a way of everybody trying to play position with their region. And she wasn't doing that, but that's just kind of like how the temperature in the room changed. And I do think everybody brings something to the table that we could share. And I've been lucky to have mentors that spoke to me on level, knew that I was rising, knew I didn't know everything, but certainly didn't speak down to me and intentionally lifted me up in the conversation. And I'd like to see more of that. Me, I'm pushing 50 years old. So anytime I can be a listener to the up and comers, I try to do so and share wisdom when I can. But I don't think I have to share my wisdom all the time. I think there's a lot of brilliance in the room, and we just got to make space for it and let iron sharpen iron.
Yeah, no, this has been a very, very enlightening forum. I really appreciate it. Just a closing comment about the different reactions we have in officer-involved shootings and racial violence in protests over wages or other issues that we run into in our day-to-day life. Hood shootings, mass shootings. Our attention span today, because I think we don't understand the intersectionality of all of these issues and how it's going to take everybody to work together to really make the needle move. We have, we get involved, we get engaged, we get in the streets after someone is killed, say a George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, but then within a week or two, it's back to business as usual. I knew here in Charleston that after 9 people were killed inside of Mother Emanuel, that folks were going to get out in the street. 10,000 of them went on the bridge here. And 2 weeks later, we couldn't get 20 people at a rally. So we have this adrenaline thing that we get this rush because we've done something, but there's no sustainability. There's no real movement. There's a move, but it's not a movement. And until we get to that point where we understand that it's the sustained pressure against this system of oppression that's going to change it, until we get to that point where we understand, as Frederick Douglass said, that power concedes nothing without demand. It never has and it never will. Until we get to the point of sustaining our demands, we're going to keep having to go through these periods of up and down, up and down, up and down. And if folks just don't, I don't know what it's going to take if folks just don't realize that, you know, we got to stop this and we got to make some real changes. I'm tired of waiting on the next murder. That's a heck of a statement to make there. I'm waiting on the next murder for people to get involved.
Well, I just wanted to thank all the great panelists tonight for taking your time to talk about this important topic, Black History Month ending today and Women's History Month starting tomorrow. I do want to say that Grand Strand Action Together will be having Women's History Month live streams as well, so look out for them. For everybody watching, I hope everybody learned some stuff tonight. And yeah, I'm just grateful for all of you. So, yep.
All right, everybody, take care, and hope to break bread with y'all at some point.
Omari, good seeing you, brother. It's been good seeing you. Wow.
See y'all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
To the people. Peace.
All right, everyone. You all take care. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
All right, y'all. Peace and love.